Today on Master Sprinter TV, the topic is, when was the last time you ran really fast? Now, studies indicate in the US there's some 50 million adults who run at least on occasion, probably somewhere in the range of 90 million adults who engage in either running or some sort of activity at the gym, or or a more intense activity than, say, just yoga or walking. But in my estimation, there's probably fewer than 10,000 adults over 35 who actually do, high intensity sprint training on a regular basis. So that leaves a fairly considerable gap when it comes to speed training as adults. Now, some may ask, why should I engage in speed training as an adult? Well, just like mobility training, just like resistance training, speed as well is a quality that declines with age if it's not trained. If you don't do mobility work, if you don't do resistance training work, you let a number of years pass, yes, you're not going to be as mobile, you're not going to be as strong as you were when you were younger. Same thing with speed. That quality, the ability to produce force rapidly, to move limbs quickly, is going to decline rather over time if you're not engaging in that type of training. And the thing is, different than, say, endurance training or distance running, is that sprint training or speed training, it actually imposes different kind of neuromuscular and biomechanical demands on the body than just kind of slower steady state cardio or endurance type training. Now, ground reaction forces and max velocity sprinting are several times body weight, and those forces occur in roughly a tenth of a second. So the concern about injury risk is a legit one, whether it's hamstrings, hip flexors, adductors, calves, Achilles, patellar tendon. Those sort of injuries can occur in adults who try to engage in max velocity sprinting without what I call a period of gradual progression of intensity. But what I'm going to try to propose here is some ideas to kind of reduce that concern, reduce that injury risk. There's no free pass here. Any activity, particular strenuous activity, is going to entail some risk of injury, but at least offer solutions so that you can still get exposure to speed training, which again, in my view, is a component of fitness, just like mobility training, resistance training, or zone 2 type cardio. But at least have a kind of control the risk of injury while still giving you exposure to a component of fitness. Now, power is the ability to produce force rapidly, and while you can train strength in a gym, there are powerlifting movements such as cleans and snatches and so forth, but no movement in a gym can replicate the limb velocities of max velocity sprinting. So any type of distance running, endurance running, or gym activities, they're not going to train the same physical qualities as max velocity type sprinting, and so what we're trying to do is get some exposure to speed training while at the same time at least lowering the risk of some of the injuries that might be more common in doing max velocity sprinting. So what is the solution for active adults who do not consider themselves to be sprinters? So what we're proposing here is kind of a fast but controlled exposure to speed. It's not the hyper aggressive max velocity type intervals, aggressive acceleration, that sort of thing. No, it's going to be a gradual acceleration coming up to a velocity that's notably above what you would do in distance runs, but notably below kind of an all-out type sprint, and then a gradual deceleration. We're talking probably intervals kind of in the 40 to 60 meter range, fully rested between intervals. So again, gradual acceleration, velocities above distance running, but below all-out efforts. It's kind of what I call speed and reserve, gradual deceleration. And so, like I said, what this does, it gives you exposure to speed training, which again, it's a modality that most adults don't really get exposed to, particularly as they age. But at the same time, by not going up to the max type velocity type training, it at least reduces the injury risk. There's no free pass, but the idea here is at least reducing your primary concern of injury risk while still giving you some exposure to speed training, which I believe is a valuable part of overall health. So hopefully this is of value to you, and until next video.